I speak today with a heavy heart for my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who are sorely grieved to lose one of our most highly respected and dearly loved members. Particularly sorrowful for me because Paul's last vote was cast for me as Speaker on the opening day of the 103rd Congress. We all had high hopes and expectations for Paul's beating the odds, so to speak, because he was such a good Christian soldier. While me mortals find it difficult to reconcile, I suspect Paul would have had an answer for it rooted in the Scripture. One word comes to mind when I think of Paul's contribution to our public life, and the word is civility. We Americans, unfortunately, have developed a rich political vocabulary for the ugly side of public life. How often we hear, it's not enough to get mad, we have to get even. Play hardball. But civility seems to have no similar public vocabulary. So we might ask, what is this quiet but vital public virtue that was at the heart of Paul Henry's life? I'd define it this way, and I think Paul would have agreed. Civility means knowing that raising the level of your voice doesn't raise the level of the discussion. It means recognizing that listening is a very good way of communicating. Civility means realizing that peaks of uncommon progress can be reached by paths of common courtesy. Civility means being tough without being mean, and being principled without being fanatic. Civility means believing in the power of reason to influence public debate and the power of the Spirit to transform private lives. Civility is the public embodiment of the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But by those standards, Paul Henry was the embodiment of civility. If I were asked to sum up Paul's impact on those of us who knew him, I'd recall a favorite phrase of my father: dare to be a Daniel. By that he meant we should have the courage of Daniel in the lion's den, retaining our convictions in different times, trusting in providence, doing what's right, especially when it's the unpopular thing to do. Paul Henry dared to be a Daniel. He dared to think through problems instead of being carried along with the crowd. He dared to take a look at an old problem from a new angle when others were content with mouthing slogans. He dared to bring bear on difficult political questions a formidable array of philosophical and religious insights when it would be so easy to just go along and get along. When we have truly difficult votes in the House, we say to other members, vote your conscience on this one. Paul Henry didn't have to be told to vote his conscience. He simply didn't know any other way to vote. For him, voting one's conscience was a political as well as a moral imperative. 3 years ago, the National Journal, one of the most admired and prestigious publications of America, named Paul Henry a rising star in the Congress. And in one sense, the great tragedy for his family and for his friends and for us in the Congress and the nation is that Paul's political star never got the opportunity to rise to its zenith. And yet, in another sense, Paul's star is now visible in a way none of us could have foretold. It has risen to a permanent place in the political firmament. 100 years ago, a wise man said, "He who exercises government by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place and all the stars turned towards it. And I guess that kind of sums it up. Paul Henry always tried to exercise government by means of virtue. And because he did, for years to come, Paul's memory will serve as a guide and an inspiration for those who seek to improve our public life. His star is now fixed, steady, and permanent. Its singular brightness can serve to show us all the way toward a much higher level of civility, thoughtfulness, and courage, as exemplified in the life and works of our dear friend, Paul Henry.